Hello, everybody! Welcome back. We've got another Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, character guide. This one's going to be Elegost. So let's take a look here. Am I on skills? Yeah, here we go. Alright, so Elegost is amazing. He is one of, it's hard for me to rank all of these characters as far as like my favorites and stuff, because they're just like, most of them have such, most have some really good skills. So anyways, all right, let's talk about his first skill tree, which is bowcraft. Unfortunately for Elegost, excuse me, sorry about that. A lot of his abilities are really expensive AP wise, but they're really good. I would say, like, overall, Elegost's main role is actually like crowd control, which is, just kind of controlling how enemies like battle order, or like whether or not they can even take turns. So Creature Bane is his first skill. Just like really everybody, his basic skill is not that great, but this one deals increased damage to animals. Mostly we'll be fighting like wargs, so Creature Bane will do more damage to wargs. I think with most characters, though, I don't really worry so much about the, enemy-specific abilities, like, Creature Bane, or, let's say, like, Uruk-hai Bane, which, obviously, is not a skill that he's got, but, whatever. Like, again, if you're fighting wargs, Creature Bane will do a little bit extra damage. Now, Arrow Flurry is an interesting ability because it actually lets you attack two enemies using the same skill, which is nice, but and actually the game lets you choose which two you'll attack as well, so that actually is a pretty interesting skill. Blinding Shot I find pretty useful, and I would say that, so this one's a low or a ranged attack that lowers the accuracy of an enemy. Now you can select to some extent, what skills you're learning. Obviously you have to learn the higher up ones to get down into the bottom. But like, as far as the order I would take for learning this stuff, I actually wouldn't learn Arrow Flurry first. I would learn Blinding Shot because I find it more useful. And then I would actually go to Crippling Shot. Draining Shot is actually a really good skill too, that not only damages the enemy but also absorbs that health and gives it to Elegost. So that's one kind of interesting thing, and he gets it pretty early on, right? So you don't necessarily need to. I should say the advantage here, obviously, is that you're dealing damage but also healing Elegost. So you don't need to use, say, a turn with Idril to heal him, since it's doing both at the same time. So very actually efficient, but I actually do think Crippling Shot is better. Ranged attack that also slows the enemy. So that will delay the enemy's turn. So that this skill, the Crippling Shot and a couple of other characters have like crippling type abilities, and they're just amazing. They're so good. And Elegost has a passive that goes along with this that actually makes this shot even more potent. And we'll talk about that once I get into the passives. But that's my recommendation here. Learn, or Creature Bane is automatically learned, and then I would switch to Blinding Shot right away, and then learn Crippling, because Crippling is just it's so good. Shield Piercing, range attack that lowers the melee defense of an enemy. Interesting. So you can use Shield Piercing, and then Barathor's sword attacks or Idril's sword strikes. Generally everybody's got and actually literally everybody else will be benefited by Shield Piercing, because as long as you're using their melee attacks. Elegost actually doesn't benefit from this, or at least shouldn't, because he doesn't have any melee attacks. So kind of interesting, but he'll increase the damage that everybody else does to your target. Pinning shot, a ranged attack that also prevents enemies from counterattacking. This is actually pretty interesting. I don't use it that much, though, just because I don't actually use that many melee attacks, frankly. I really prefer to use spirit-based attacks in this game, and so, that's less of an issue then. True shot, deadly ranged attack that causes tremendous damage to an enemy. This actually is a really, really good ability, and I believe when you use Barathor's, like, as long as you've learned this, if you use Barathor's cry abilities, which is the abilities that makes, or basically has him, I should say, have the other characters, take turns on his turn, I guess. I don't know, that's a really complicated way of saying that he makes other characters attack, kind of like for free, too, so it'll make it so that you actually don't even use any AP for True Shot, because as long as Elegost has it learned, he will be using that. I'll actually show that here in a little bit, too, but True Shot is actually, it is very powerful and amazing skill. So let's go on to his Ranger Craft. Now, this is the really, obviously there's a lot more skills in this tree, and so it's going to take you a bit more time to learn everything, but, and especially because generally, in order to learn all these different skills, I use Crippling Shot over and over, because that skill is so good. But, alright, anyways, back into the Ranger Craft here. He starts with Aim Shot. This is I think it costs 50 AP, and it is nice, but, so Piercing Might is his skill that I usually use really to spam, because it only costs 25 AP, so it's obviously a lot cheaper, and you can use it a lot more, without having to restore your AP again. It also lowers the melee damage caused by a target, so that's actually a pretty nice skill if you're fighting, anything that's using melee attacks on you. Trolls really come to mind, especially early on in the game. You'll fight trolls throughout the game, but reducing their damage early on is really nice. Actually, I shouldn't even say early on. It's just always nice to be able to reduce their damage because they do so much damage. Pierce Will, a ranged attack that lowers the spirit defense of an enemy. This skill is amazing. I use a lot of spirit attacks, so reducing the spirit defense of your enemies can be extremely useful. I really, really like this in, like, extended battles as well, just because, again, you'll get a lot more out of it, other than, if you were to use Spirit Will on one random enemy that you just wipe out in one shot. So that's that. Now, as far as Arrows of Sleep here, this is Elegost's best skill in the game. I should say, it's the best skill. It might be the best skill in the entire game. Arrows of Sleep is a ranged attack that puts a foe to sleep for a short time. There are 2 passives that Elegost has that make this skill even better. It's already pretty good. Unfortunately, its drawback is that it's kind of a slow attack. So once he uses it, generally speaking, enemies, or I should say the enemies that don't fall asleep, will get multiple turns before Elegost gets a turn again. That's really its only drawback, but it's so good that its usefulness far outweighs that detriment. And I'll talk a bit more about the... Actually, I'll bring them up here. We'll go over the passives here in a little bit as well, but he's got 2 passives. The first passive makes it so that Arrows of Sleep hits all enemies, which is, amazing. It's just so good. And then his second passive just makes it even more broken, and it makes it so that when he puts an enemy to sleep, they never wake up until you damage them. It's, again, I would argue that Arrows of Sleep actually is the best skill in the game. I fully believe that. And so as far as learn order, you'll go right down the line, right? Aim Shot, Piercing Might, Pierce Will, and then right into Arrows of Sleep. All right, so let's move on. Paralyzing Shot, a ranged attack that also prevents a foe from using any melee attacks for a short time. Another amazing skill. This is really useful against trolls. You'll just prevent them from being able to attack you at all. I don't know if I should say, I know it's not effective on every troll in the game, or I'm fairly certain anyway, but especially early on, this is a great skill. King's Foil Grace is a really interesting ability. It restores some health to one party member over time. So it's a heal over time. It's expensive. It's like 100 AP, but it's a really nice for a little bit of extra healing. Cursed Arrow. A ranged attack that also weakens a foe's ranged attacks for a short time. So this is good against archers. It'll just reduce the damage that they do. I don't use it that much, but it's an interesting skill nonetheless. Flash Arrow, ranged attack that blinds all enemies, reducing their melee and ranged accuracy. Amazing skill. Being able to just reduce your enemy's accuracy is going to reduce the amount of damage that you take, obviously. And the fact that this works for melee and ranged skills is really good. The only thing that's not really going to do much for you is for when you are fighting casters. Arrow Splinters. Ranged attack that also prevents a foe from attacking from range for a short time. So it's basically the equivalent of Paralyzing Shot, except it works on ranged characters. So interesting skill. Grace of Athelis. Or Athelis, I don't know how to say that, or I don't remember how to say it. I think it's Athelis. Grants the entire party health regeneration. So it's basically the party version of King's Foil Grace. It's double the cost, but it actually ends up being more efficient because you obviously cast it one time and it hits everybody. So you essentially save 100 AP. Great skill. Again, health regeneration over time is very useful. Pierce Spirit, a ranged attack that also lowers the magic damage caused by an enemy for a short time. Great ability to reduce the damage that casters do. Northern Storm summons a lightning storm that strikes all foes for heavy damage over time. Very interesting ability. It really helps if you do like I've done. I build Elegost, and I should have brought this up earlier, but I build Elegost for Heavy Spirit early on because you won't really be missing a whole lot, so you don't need to worry about his dexterity at first, but eventually you will need to build dexterity as well. The alternative to doing that would be to split your points half and half, but again, I feel like he's accurate enough at the beginning of the game where you don't necessarily need to do that, and you can actually dump way more points into his spirit and get his AP pool up higher. And I find that's great because so many of his skills are so expensive that you'll be constantly starved for AP if you don't do that. So that's my take. But a great skill again. Lightning Storm that deals damage or heavy damage over time. It's a really, really powerful ability. Fangorn Roots, a ranged attack that also completely immobilizes a foe for a short time. I'm going to try that out here for a little bit. I don't remember how useful this was or not because I just got it again. But it does certainly sound amazing. I think that's basically the equivalent of Paralyzing Shot and Arrow Splinters together, but we'll see. I don't know if this affects casters, so we'll give that a shot. All right, so let's talk about his passives. Obviously, you're going to work on Ranger Evade right away. I believe that you'll learn Ranger Evade at level 11, and then Dunedain Evasion. Oh, so anyways, gives him a chance to automatically dodge. That's just great. I mean, any ability that allows you to dodge more often is great, or a passive anyway, and you don't have a choice anyway. You have to learn it. Oh, this is funny. I didn't realize this. Dunedain Evasion increases Elegost's ability to dodge an enemy attack. So both of his first passives actually just allow him to dodge more. That's funny. You'll learn Dunedain Evasion at level 16. The next ability I would do is I would not, it'll automatically default to Hands of the Bowman, which increases his dexterity, which improves his accuracy. So generally in the game or in all of the games that I've played now, I focus Elegost at least to some extent on his dexterity. You need to be landing Arrows of Sleep. you need to get to the point where you're not missing that on anybody, because it is so good and it is so useful. And it's extremely important. And I would say that you don't want to rely on Barathor's company Valor to boost his dexterity in order to land Arrows of Sleep, because you want to use that right away at the beginning or as early as you can and get everything slept, because that's going to get you battle control very early on. So Hands of the Bowman, learn that first. Ranger War Rally, obviously you can see now I'm already level 52 and I haven't actually learned this passive yet, and it's obviously this is one of the, I think this actually is going to be the last one that I learn. I don't use perfect mode that often, so the fact that he gains momentum for his actions, I just don't care about. I value his other passives a lot more than this, so obviously I'm learning that last. Spirit of the North. Now, I actually have talked a lot now about his AP pool. Even that said, though, I value Frenzy more. It allows Elegost to immediately take 2 actions during his turn. I mean, that is so good. So I basically go from Hands of the Bowman over into Frenzy, and then I do Sleep Volley. Actually, I'll talk about that at the end. Let's just discuss all of these different passives first. Spirit of the North, obviously, again, increases the AP pool. Frenzy lets you take the 2 additional actions. Blessing of Haste allows Elegost to take actions more often during combat. That's very good. Sleep Volley, I mentioned this before, makes Arrows of Sleep attack affect all enemies. That is amazing. You need to prioritize this. You need to get to this as early as you possibly can. And then Lingering Sleep immediately after makes attack Arrows of Sleep last for the duration of the fight. Again, we talked about this earlier. Arrows of Sleep is the most, my opinion, the best ability in the entire game because of its ability to control combat. And Lingering Sleep makes it even better. I mean, it's nigh broken. And then lastly, Crippling Might here increases the effectiveness of Crippling Shot. Crippling Shot is probably his second most useful ability because it delays the actions of the enemies, and the fact that you can make that even more effective is amazing. So again, let's talk about the order. Again, Ranger Evade, Dunedain Evasion, you have no choice. You will have to learn these first. You will get Dunedain Evasion at 16, meaning that you'll get Hands of the Bowman, which I prioritize that at 21. Then I move on to Frenzy, and you'll get that at 26. And again, keep in mind, you have to micromanage this stuff. You can't take excess levels in, like, you know, if you screw up and go from 26 to 27 and get like Ranger, or put 1 point into Ranger War Rally. That puts you 1 level behind, you know, where you want to be at. So micromanage these as best you can. If you screw up, I guess it's not the end of the world, but it just means that you're going to get to the good skills slower. Anyway, so Frenzy, then on to Sleep Volley. Again, broken. It's so good. And then after Sleep Volley, you learn Lingering Sleep. Now, from that point, I think you can make a good argument. Instead of going for Crippling Might, go to, I would say, Blessing of Haste, because it's going to let him take more actions, and I view that to be a little bit more useful than Crippling Might. But right after Blessing of Haste, go to Crippling Might. Then I would say do Spirit of the North to bump up his AP pool even higher, and then lastly learn Ranger War Rally. So that's that. I won't go into Lightcraft and Shadowcraft because my other 2 videos on the other 2 characters, I've already really explained those, but they are nice. For Elegost, I mean, frankly, I think they're nice for everybody, especially that Lightcraft tree, because it's got an ability that allows you to drain AP from your enemy and restore it to yourself. I am going to showcase some of Elegost's abilities here. I actually want to try out, let's just see if Fangorn Roots is going to do anything to this chieftain. I'm just really kind of curious here. You'll notice here, I'm not doing any damage because I have him equipped with a really bad bow. So let's let's re-equip him. I actually do that too. If I want to learn a bunch of his bow type abilities, I equip him with a really kind of junk bow. And then, because I don't want to do a whole lot of damage because I'm trying to build up his abilities. Let's cleanse Barathor. Clunk. Ooh, nice. Triple critical. Oh, looks like Barathor is equipped with a really bad sword as well. Okay. Fangorn Roots looks like it's really slow. So that's kind of crummy. Let's try to get rid of his bleed here. Dual blades. Bum bum bum. Oh, this might kill him. We'll see here. Oh, okay. Huh. Ugh, back to yeah, it's looking like Fangorn Roots is completely immobilizing. It doesn't look like this caster is getting any turns at all. So, that actually is kind of interesting. And then, yeah, Shield of Courage is... It looks like Shield of Courage is completely negating all effects, which is awesome. Alright, so Elegost, here we go. Alright. I'm just going to use Frenzy here to get the, Alright, so I've actually got all of the Lightcraft and Shadowcraft skills learned on Elegost, but keep in mind here that you can't use them after you've used Frenzy. So at this point, I would use Arrows of Sleep to put everything to sleep. You'll see here. So this is the combination of the Sleep Volley and Lingering Sleep. Now, the Uruk, the Lancer guy here, as well as the caster, are actually immune to sleep. So that's not going to do you any good for them. But what I could do here is use Crippling Shot on this, on the Lance guy. But let's actually try, let's try another Fangorn Roots here. I just want to see if this will affect this guy too. It looks like it's... Okay, my bet here, and I don't know if it's programmed the exact same way, but it's looking like Fangorn Roots might be the equivalent of just Fear. Fear is from the Shadowcraft tree, and it paralyzes an enemy. So that, it looks like it's working the same way. Now, I don't know here if that also, like Fear, makes the enemy completely vulnerable to all attacks, and then you can't miss on them, because that's the way that Fear works. But I'm not 100% sure on if Fangorn Roots works the same way. But great skill. It's hard to argue the fact that he's got them completely paralyzed. Let's get him equipped with his better bow here. And then I'm going to use... I just want to show you that when Barathor uses his cry here, he'll use... or I should say Elegost will use True Shot. I think he'll learn, or he'll use it now. Yeah, there it is. So, boom, 25,000 damage. That is, yeah, that's the most damage that I can do right now. I know I'm not able to do that kind of damage with anybody else. So, that's another reason why Barathor's Warcry is so good. And I'm a little disappointed, actually, that I didn't have Elegost learning True Shot already when I was using it. Look at that. That is just... that is nuts. And obviously I used it twice in a row there. So I don't know if I would say that these three make the best trio. It might be the case, though, the amount of damage that the three of them can put out. And then again, on top of that, like... the fact that now on Idriel's next turn, she can just use Valoria's Haste on Barathor to get him, to have to basically rip two war calls off back to back again, is kind of nuts. So I think that's gonna be it. Let's just see here. Yeah, I think that's a good enough discussion here on Elegost. I would use crippling shots if I wanted to I don't know, do some other stuff here, maybe buff up or whatever. And that's kind of like his useful, or that's one of the things that makes him useful too. So the other thing is, like, when I first started the battle, I could have used a frenzy right away and then put everything to sleep and then used Fangorn Roots on one of the enemies. So then there only would have been we'll just say the guy with the lance would have been the only one that would have been able to take any actions. So let's actually, let's get out of here, and then I want to show you what his stats are at right now. Let's check Northern Storm too. This skill looks really cool. Yeah, this is one of the coolest looking skills in the entire game. 6k initially, and then it'll probably tick for another, like 3k, about half of that. Okay. So pretty good damage. That's no true shot, but it hits all enemies. So and again, it is a dot as well. So it is actually a really, really good ability. But we'll check out Elegost's stats. So at level 52, I've got him with 143 spirit and 110 dexterity. Now, right when I got into I was doing pure spirit on him for a long time, and I think once I got to the East Eminent Gullies, I started swapping over to dexterity. Now, I don't know what level that would have been, probably like 35-ish, but I think I should have started building dexterity a little bit earlier. Probably towards the end of Moria is when I should have at least started either splitting the stats or swapping over to dexterity. But as of right now, at level 52 at 110 dexterity, I don't think he's missing ever. So I guess keep that in mind. It's kind of one of those things though, where you don't, kind of overdoing dexterity probably isn't the best thing ever. So I would maybe build spirit until you start missing. And then if you've noticed you've started to miss, then start working on dexterity, and don't, again, from that point, split them, do 1 point spirit, 1 point dexterity, and try to stay, around the same, maybe. I mean, obviously, I've got a little bit more spirit than dexterity. Actually, 30 dexterity is about 15 levels, kind of. Not every level is the same amount of spirit, or of points, but that is about it. As far as his armor, that's probably Elegost's biggest weakness. He doesn't have very much for armor. He's kind of got some weaknesses as well. You can try to make up for some of that with, cracked elf stones and stuff. But as with everybody, I put a elf stone of spirit enhancement on him. Here he's got a polished elf stone of armor enhancement. That helps try to bump that armor stat up. This cracked elf stone of health enhancement, I could probably get rid of that and go with I don't know, probably something that ups his, piercing resistance would probably be a better investment, because having a little bit of extra health isn't as good, I think, as having better resistances. But that's about it. I'm not going to go too much more into the rest of his equipment, because generally I think that you want to have kind of the best stuff that you can get. Now, the only thing that you could maybe argue is probably his brooch. This one, I've got him with the Rohirrim Brooch of Might. 16 strength, 10 dex is a lot. I mean, that's a lot of stats. And so that's actually just really hard to beat. This thing doesn't have any resistances. That's the only real weakness that it's got. But, the only other option I would say would be maybe this one right now, the Second Age Elven Brooch of Wrath. Keep in mind, though, I'm also only at about halfway through the game. So, it's likely that there's going to be better equipment options in the future. But as of right now, it's really a toss-up between these two. This one's resistant to Shadow, which is really nice. But it's also got 22 speed, 9 spirit. So very much more of it's going to give him a bunch more AP. Though the problem is I'm going to lose a ton of dex by swapping over to this one. But And honestly, I value his dexterity much more than speed or spirit because I want to make sure that I'm connecting. I could probably get away with this if I knew for sure that I wasn't going to miss, and this actually then would be a better option. So well, actually, I'm going to try that out. But that's about it. So that's my take on Elegost. Again, make sure that you're actually connecting. Again, here's my stats as of right now. I just dropped 10 dexterity, so we'll see if, again, if I would, be missing from this point on, I would immediately swap back to that other brooch that's got the 10 dexterity on it, because that is his most important role, is to connect with his CC type abilities. So that is it. That is all the time I've got to speak about Elegost. This one ended up, looks like, being the longest one. But he is a pivotal character. I think a couple of the other characters are just not as effective as him. This guy is all about battlefield control, and that is, he does it well, does it, in my opinion, a lot better than anybody else, and by far. So that is my take on Elegost.